Welcome to the People's Revolution podcast. This is a space where we share stories from activists around the world. We hope that these stories inspire you to act locally as we share globally.
I don't have a problem with you. This generation, look around, there's nothing left to do. Liberation, take one final step and then you'll see the complications. System don't belong to you or me.
Welcome to the People's Revolution podcast. We're going to start, as always, with a land acknowledgement. A recognition that we are on stolen land is not enough when the genocide we call history still continues today and is reinforced by the daily lives of those unaware. Residential schools only closed their last doors in 1997, but the mentality of the residential schools lives on. White people imagine living in a place that not only normalizes genocide, but actively covers it up. We don't live here because a peaceful treaty was signed. We live here because white people before us brutally pushed their way in. This includes our current government, RCMP, and church, and we need to acknowledge this and the harmful systems it brought with it before we can even attempt to create reconciliation. It is a privilege to not know that you are living in such a way that makes a genocidal reality seem like regular everyday life. But I would still like to recognize that the stolen land I'm speaking from is rightfully the home of the traditional territories of the Blackfoot Nations and was forced to be the home of Treaty 7. These nations are Siksika, Kainai, and Piikani. In these spaces, the Siksikatsitapi people lived and practiced their oral traditions as far back as existence goes. Treaty 7 was signed on September 22nd, 1877 in a brutally unethical way. This treaty was not upheld. Treaty 7 includes the Tsuut'ina Nation, the Stoney Nakoda Nations, and the Métis Nation of Region 3. So this space, known as Calgary, is actually rightfully known as Mohkinstsis. Thank you. So today we have Gitz Crazyboy, an activist, author, youth worker, actor, and all-around inspiring human. He has done so much work in so many different spaces, and I'm really excited to have this conversation.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much for being here. I want to just jump right in and talk about you. You've been an activist in not just Alberta, but in North America for a really, really, really long time. You've worked in a lot of different spaces with a lot of different people. And I don't even actually know where to start. But yeah, thank you for being here.
Well, in the wise words of the Mad Hatter, start at the beginning, and when you get to the end, stop.
Actually, to start at the beginning. So you are from Fort McMurray or Fort Ship. And so
my dad's side is from Lake Athabasca. They did a lot of traveling along the Delta from what you'd like post-colonization, which you'd refer to as like Saskatchewan, and then specifically around an area called Carswell Lake. But my grandfather, Baba, or Isidore Deranger, he used to travel northern Alberta, northern Saskatchewan, northern Manitoba to the Barren Lands on dog sled. That's my dad's side. And they eventually moved to Fort Ship after. On my mom's side, we're from Piikani, which is just south of Calgary, in Blackfoot territory here in Treaty 7. My dad's up in Treaty 8, mom's in Treaty 7. But I spent some time on the res, and then we moved up to Fort Mac in 89, and then I grew up there and graduated. So I got to see the boomtown effects of Fort Mac. It was really nice, quiet town. It was always kind of crazy, but then after Kretchen came up, and there was more of a fixation on the tar sands and more, I guess, investment, it became pretty lawless for a while. It was a really wild town for a bit. It really mirrored like Sin City, like of all the crazy corruption and just how much money there was, drugs, everything. It was a crazy place to grow up. But once I graduated, started moving around different parts of North America, living with different Indigenous peoples, learning as much as I could, and then moving back to Fort Mac until the Fort Mac fire. And then after that, I moved down here to Calgary.
When did your activism, or if that's what you or your work in Fort McMurray start?
I want to say my like early 20s. I really people were so ignorant about the process of the oil extraction and the cost in which we lose the earth to get the oil, and then just seeing all the changes. Um, and so I just started talking about my experience growing up there, and then learning about the process itself. And it was interesting to challenge people on their ideas of what Fort Mac is and Fort Chip, um, even like Fort Mackay, Janvier, Conklin, all the surrounding Indigenous communities. Because people are so far removed, and the Indigenous narrative is one that gets silenced a lot. And so I was just bringing my personal story around, and kind of had a knack to talk to people about it, and just bringing up these truths about it. And also, like, I don't really give a shit either. So I don't really care about messing up someone's day, their presentation. I don't care about where they're at. Like, I don't really give a shit if they're lying or they're telling a half truth and they're not from there. Like, I got to represent my people. So I would say, like, in my early 20s, really, it just really began to tell my story of Fort McMurray and Fort Chip. And it's also carrying the stories of my family and friends and the people we've lost from cancer, and like trying to carry those stories, people who are deeply impacted, and then seeing that impact on them. And some of those I was directly impacted, but some I definitely wasn't. But knowing that their pain, that their truth was able to get out, and not just be like just stuck in this far corner of the boreal forest.
Yeah, yeah, and you've talked about your Fort Mac experiences all over North America. You've talked about it in the Idle No More movement, as well as at, I think, different universities. I watched a couple different talks, little clips.
Thank you.
And like, you have been sharing this message, it seems, for quite a long time. And some of the stuff that I had heard in your different talks are things that I've heard in your more current talks in the past few years. And so I feel like you've been trying to explain this to people for quite a long time.
Yeah, I mean, well, one of the things to address right away, because I know haters will say like, "Oh, he traveled around North America. He uses gas. He's a hypocrite." And the interesting thing about that is, like, what makes you a worse hypocrite is not, using something and being critical about it. So people who eat meat will often just completely disregard the arguments of a vegetarian or a vegan because they don't eat meat, and they're like, "What right do you have to talk about this? Because you don't participate in this." We forcefully participate in the oil extraction. Whether or not I fly or not fly, they're still exploiting Indigenous peoples in Treaty 8. They're still taking the oil out of the land. People are still dying, whether or not I hop on a plane. And the way I always kind of justify it is that I looked always as like an investment. And I didn't hit everything because I was always asked to go to different places all the time to talk about it. And some of them I found worthwhile, and some I would just be like, I don't want to go there. Like, there's no point. I don't want to fly to like the G8 or G20 or G10. I don't want to fly to those conferences. I don't personally see a point in them and going. Others do, and that's fantastic. I just you'll never see me go to one, and I never really agreed with going. So there's a lot of these stuff I had to turn down because it comes back to that investment. If I go to this place, how many people can I talk to? How many people can I engage with? And will that be worthwhile? And so that was always kind of what my main purpose, my main focus was in traveling. So I really want to like address that, because I know haters will say like, "Oh, he uses gas, therefore I don't have to listen to him. He's a hypocrite." Like, whether or not I use gas, they're still exploiting the people. And I always try to make these moments count. If I was going to hop on a plane, I was going to go to an area, it had to matter. It had to matter to me, at least, even if somebody doesn't get it. Even if I pissed off some of those like environmental activist allies that I didn't want to go to their thing.
Yeah. So the most pissed off criticism that I saw of you that pissed me off and I think would piss other people too off if they saw it, is the guy that made Rebel Media.
Oh.
Like 10 years ago, you somehow got on stage to debate him, and you did amazing. Like your words, it was fantastic, it was beautiful. And then this guy just got racist and holy shit racist, and he just kept, and people were booing him and he did not care.
Oh, I mean, that's Ezra Levant. He called me a Jew baiter and a Holocaust denier, which both are, like, I fully believe these things happen. These atrocities happen to the Jewish people. I often found overlaps with the colonization, the eradication of the Jewish folks and us in North America. There was a lot of similarities. Where, I mean, there's a lot of differences as well, but I mean, I'm not here going to argue about or diminish or devalue the loss of Jewish life, because those are sacred dead. And there was a lot of things I'd learned from my Jewish friends that I carried over to my ideologies, things I incorporated. So when we talk about our survivors of like the residential schools or those that died, they became our sacred dead. That thing, sacred dead, I got that. It was completely borrowed from my late brother David Lertzman. So yeah, I mean, he was an interesting character. I never knew who he was, and he was like, "Oh, they ambushed me." I had no idea who he was. I was in school in Vancouver at the time, and they had all these these flyers, and I'd walk by one. That was like the ethics of oil. Oh man, I can't remember his name. Ben West, I think, and Ezra Levant, they're having a debate. I'm like, oh, maybe this is like oil compared to conflict oil. Maybe that's what the whole thing is about. Maybe it's like, Saudi Arabia, or maybe it's about these illegal these mining companies which are skirting in a gray area. They're exploiting people around the world, or maybe it's about some big massacre I haven't heard of yet. And that was my thought process walking in. And I'm watching this debate happen. I'm like, man, this is like terrible. Ben was doing his best, but the overall story of who we were again was being left out. You have these environmental activists, they have a really good idea, and they tend to just not really purposefully or not purposely silence our voice or miss a whole segment of who we are. And so that pissed me off. I was actually pretty mad. I was more mad at Ben than I was at Ezra. And then when I got on there with Ezra, I didn't realize he'd blow a gasket and that he would just keep blowing his gasket further and further and further. Like, I did not expect that. And I had some Jewish people I didn't even know being like, that guy doesn't represent us. And I'm like, I don't expect one guy to represent, the entire Jewish race, everybody that's passed on, everyone that's coming. It was crazy. It was really crazy.
It was hard to watch. Like, he went at you from a couple different angles, and that means you must have got to him, because even when people were booing him, he just was talking over the booing. And
I think I think healthy debates are important, but everything you need to know, not really everything, the core values of who he is that you really need to know took place in that last 10 seconds where he went nuts. And then I was like, okay, whatever, just I'll shake his hand. Whatever fucking happened, it happened. And then I remember offering my hand to him, and he just flat out rejected me. If you ever want to know a person's core values, what they really are like, he literally showcased it. And that's exactly who he is. And I wish this guy would learn to be a better human being to other people, but he hasn't. He just kind of doubled down and became more bitter over the years.
Yeah, because I guess he started the Western Standard first, but then someone took it and made it less shitty, which is surprising. And then he went for the Rebel Media. And he's also a lawyer, I think.
He was a lawyer.
Yeah, the video I saw actually didn't have the ending.
You didn't see me try to shake his hand?
No, and I didn't. So I must have missed a part of the debate too, because it did cut off.
I think there's two points in that. There's two videos to watch.
Yeah.
And I hate to watch myself. I really hate watching myself. I never watch any of my talks or anything. And I probably should to critique and make myself as like a better speaker, but it was hard. But people kept saying like, you need to watch it. So I watched it a couple of times. But I remember just like, I remember hearing my mom's voice, just shake his hand, just, give him that little bit of the courtesy to shake his hand.
Mm.
And like I said, that's who his character is,
Yeah. Yeah. I'll have to find the second part and I'll have to check that out, but it was wild. It was one of the wilder things.
You just don't think it'll get worse. And you're like, holy shit, it's getting worse.
Every sentence.
He's not going to get louder, and he gets louder.
Yeah. I'm scared to watch the second half, but I will. Okay. Well, on funnier notes, other cool things that you've done and to get your message out. The Yes Men, when you started working with them in Fort McMurray, and then you did a couple different projects with them.
Yeah.
And so in Fort McMurray, was that when you first met them? They came to do the tar sand?
My cousin Ariel, she does the Indigenous Climate Action, I think, based in Canada. I think that's what she has now. I just got sick of all these like people coming to Mac and shooting documentaries and stuff and having to talk to them, and you never see the shit that they make. Like I never see any of them. They never send me a link, whatever. So I just got sick of it. I was like, I don't want to talk to any more of your friends. Like, I don't give a shit to what they're doing anymore. Like, it's a waste of my goddamn time. And then she sent me this thing and she's like, well, the Yes Men want to come up and they really want to meet you. And I was like, fuck, fine. Like, I guess I'll meet them. Like, this will be the very last one. And it's literally like, I would tell her, don't send me anything. And then the second I do that, she sends me something right after. It always pissed me off. Even like talking to people, I'd be like, well, I'm done. I don't want to like talk to this person. Then she would send me that person right after. I'd be like, okay, whatever. So I took them around, and I think we went to like Mackay, and they wanted to get a boat to go take some footage, and they're filming their third film. The Yes Men Are Revolting. And so we got a boat. I got my buddy's Gord's boat from Mackay, and we're going, and then we run aground. We had a sandbar, and it screws up the engine, and we have to paddle. And we were stuck on the river for like, I swear, like 8 hours paddling. We get stuck, we jump off, we push the boat out, we start paddling again, we get stuck, and we just bonded. We just kept telling stories and laughing, and it was a really cool experience. And then afterwards, we went to Joma's Pizza, we got some donaires, and we talked, and that was it. I was like, oh, that's cool. I don't know what's going to make it in the film or not. They have this amazing segment with this guy named Kyle, who was like, he was the total bro of oil sands. Like, everything he said was gold, and I'm surprised to make it into the film. Like, he didn't care about the environment, he didn't care about anything. He just wanted to dig into the earth and get the oil, and that's all he cared about. Anyways, so yeah, after all that time, they left. Like 6 months later, I get a couple emails that went right into my spam, and I get a phone call, and I think it's from one of the Yes Men, or it might have been the director, Laura Nix, who is an amazing, beautiful, powerful, creative force. And she just actually got nominated for an Academy. She did a short documentary that got nominated. She's just amazing. Can't say enough good things about her. She unfortunately set this really high bar for directors and creatives. And then the next director that I worked with was unfortunately Michelle Latimer, who was like so fucking just a gigantic failure to work with. You meet someone like Laura, and on the exact opposite end of the spectrum, you meet somebody like Michelle Latimer, and you're like, how the fuck does this even work? Anyways, I'm kind of going off track. So I get a call from like 6 months later, and they want me to help plan their last skit for the Department of Defense. They wanted to prank the Department of Defense.
The Homeland Security Congress.
Yeah, it was Thanksgiving. I can't remember what we called it. Mm-hmm. And so I planned it with Tira Barra, and we pranked everybody thinking that the United States was going to invest billions into green alternatives.
Okay, wait, is that when you said that you were part of the wannabe nation?
Yeah.
And they that's how you started it, and they were like, yeah, okay.
Well, I think like when what I realized about theater, what I realized about Indigenous folks is that you get a Native guy with a drum who can sing, and white people will believe anything that Native guy says.
Even that you're a part of the wannabe.
The wannabe, like we're not real, or the wannabe tribe.
I got, yeah. Maybe because
like,
maybe because I like read it and I didn't like, because there was no video of it, so maybe that's because I could clearly see it. Maybe
there's a video they have online. I can't remember. It's like Operation Thanksgiving. I think that's what the skit was called, and that was the way they closed out the final film. But we got everybody to we had a mock round dance where it looks like everybody's holding each other's asses, and we got them to wear,
I saw that video.
We got them to wear like these bandanas with a instead of a feather with like a windmill. Mm-hmm. They all believed it. Like everything it was so full of shit, but it was awesome to weave this to augment reality, to bring them in and not even tell them in the end. We just like fucked off. And so, okay, to get in, we said that they said that they were representing Colin Powell, and that we were going to go on before Colin Powell because we were going to make this statement, and Colin Powell was going to be the exclamation point on the statement. And they kept saying like, "Oh, he's on his way. Colin's on his way. He's just stuck in traffic. He's got this meeting. They're going to go up first, and then Colin will be here later." And so we did our presentation, and everybody's waiting for Colin Powell to show up. Like everybody is in there is super excited to meet Colin Powell. And we just left. And then as we left, they kept calling. He's like, "Oh yeah, Colin Powell's like, he's literally like 5 minutes away. He's 10 minutes away. He's at the door." And then we just stopped answering the phone.
So you just were like, "We're going to make America clean, renewable energy by 2030. Goodbye." And they were like, "Okay, Colin Powell."
Like hook, line, and sinker. I remember getting cards from all of these like people from the Department of Defense, Department of Homeland Security. There was some, I think, a senator, or I can't remember, but I remember getting all these like cards from people who wanted to invest. And that was like the one thing I took away from it, was that it's like everybody wanted that moment to believe. Like they were waiting for permission to believe that they could invest in something. Yeah. And then once we gave that to them, they fully were in there. Like, and this wasn't in the film, but like people were ready. They're like, "We have this project, and we're looking for land, and maybe we can do something on the reservations." And I'm like, all of this shit is just all the answers that we have right now for climate are there. And everybody's like, they're just kind of waiting. And then we gave them that moment in while we were shooting. It was completely fake and 100% bullshit, but they believed. And that was the thing I took away from all of that, was like, it's there. For people who say it's an impossibility, it's literally right there. We're right at the cusp. We've been at the cusp for like the last 30 fucking years, 40 years.
Did that like inspire, I don't know if it came before or after, but like when you did the Yes Men thing where you like the like Cinema for Peace, and you like got on stage and were saying like, "Who was with me?" and people were raising their hands. Was that because of this?
We had, oh my God, this is like the craziest. This is like a really long story, and
I'm here for it. I watched it and I was like, "What the heck?"
No, okay, so oh my God, okay, so we had this initial plan where I was going to be we specifically, like, I helped them write it out, where we could be culturally insensitive because we were going to mock industrial development with Indigenous and Inuit people, because they were drilling up in the they're getting ready to drill in the Arctic now because everything's melting. So I was going to be I can't remember what my name was, but I was going to be the Eskimo relations. I was going to be like Eskimo relations, because any Inuit person's going to be like, "That shit's fucking racist." But then when we could break it down, like the whole process of the industrial expansion and exploitation is racist. So we're going to make fun of that. And then Mike from the Yes Men was going to be a CEO of something, but he was going to be drunk, and he was going to start rambling on about like how climate change is a plus. And we had this polar bear, this like man-made polar bear in the background, and they were gonna like, people, this is like a German thing, but these people were gonna fall out of the polar bear. Mike was gonna try to like, I think he was gonna try to like hump it or ride it or something, and then the people inside were gonna fall out. And the very German thing is like naked humor, so they were gonna be naked, and then chase Mike around as I, the indigenous person, or the Inuit, the Eskimo relations, was going to talk about the benefits of, you know, industrial expansion. Well, all this shit's going on behind me. However, as we were going in, we got busted by security. Security got our whole team, like all of our team was busted. Where we were at was, I think it was like the Peace Gala in Berlin during the Berlinale, the film festival. And they had this thing called the Peace Gala. And this guy, he's like a millionaire in Germany. What he did was he saw the Berlinale, and what he would do is he had this, like, he'd rent out this fancy hall. He would charge like fucking $2,000 a plate. And then he would get celebrities to donate props from their movies. And then whatever they fundraise, because it was like they were auctioning them off, whatever they could fundraise, that money would go to the to whatever, charity that they wanted. So that's where we were at. And they had like, they would say names that wouldn't even show up, but they would send invites out to like Leonardo DiCaprio and everybody else. And then like Natalie Portman was there, and she was actually there. So our whole team gets busted, and it's just me and Mike, and we just duck out a side door, and we're in the actual hall of this gala, and security is looking for us, and we're like ducking down between these like tables, and we're like, what are we gonna do?
I was wondering how you got up there. That makes sense.
I was like, what are we gonna do, man? Like, there's just us. And he's like, Mike's like, let's go rush the stage. Let's pretend that we're winning an award. And I'm like, will that work? And he's like, yeah, we'll just hijack the mic. And we're like, but when though? And he's like, well, we'll wait for a certain award. And if I know the people, then we'll just go do it. So there was an award that was given. I can't remember. It was, I felt bad because he said he knew the people, and he did, but the lady who accepted, he didn't know. And so when we went up there to get they called the award. I remember like sitting, like we're crouched down by the tables, and they announced the winner. Mike's like, I know everybody who's in that film. I'm like, okay, cool. Let's go do it. I'm like, oh man, should we? And he starts walking up, and I was like, Mike, and then he just went, I was like, fuck it, let's just go. So we walked up, and I remember they said presenting the award was Natalie Portman. And I'm like, that's that can't be the real. And we're on stage, and she comes out, and I'm like, oh my God, there's like, Natalie's a couple years older than me, and I've had a gigantic crush on her since like the movie Heat, when I was like a kid and she was a kid, and she just got more beautiful throughout the years. And,
she's walking towards you, and
she's walking towards us, and I'm like, holy shit, what are we doing here? And then then it became a thing of like telling people to divest, which was like, it's different than running up and asking for everyone's money. Mm-hmm. Saying, oh, do this, invest in the yes men, invest in this. We're like, no, just take your money back. Take your money back from whatever, fossil fuels. And the whole place is full of millionaires, maybe even billionaires, but like everybody was fucking loaded. And we're telling people, just take your money back. We don't want your money. Don't invest in us. Don't invest in Greenpeace. Just take your money out from the oil investment that's happening right now. That's going to like, I think it was Gazprom or Shell or whatever. Take your money back. And then we got kicked out. And I remember like there was the guy who did Darwin's Nightmare. He joined us on stage, and I think he won an Academy, or he was nominated for Darwin's Nightmare. And he loved everything we were doing. He's like, this is real. Like, this is real activism. This is the shit we should be doing. It's not like the fake Hollywood stuff. And I'm like, yeah. And I remember security came in to grab me, and there was a moment where like, should I resist? Should I not resist? Like, I thought, no, man, I'll just go. Like, whatever. I'm not gonna get fucked up on the main stage, in Germany. And as I'm saying that, in
front of Natalie Portman, I wouldn't do that.
So while this is happening, Mike does nonviolent resistance, and he goes limp as they're carrying him, and they push him on the stage, and on like in the front of the stage is a flight of stairs. And Mike starts flying down the stairs. No. And I remember watching him like, oh shit. And I look at the bottom of the stairs, and there's the he was alive then, and it was like he was an old man in a wheelchair with an oxygen machine and a blanket. But Christopher Lee from Star Wars from Lord of the Rings was there. Mike's tumbling down towards him, flying down the stairs. And I'm like, oh my God, he's going to fucking nail Christopher Lee and like kill him because he's so old and frail. Mike hits and I guess Mike's saying that the last second. And he just fucking, instead of rolling into it, he just like absorbs the blow and he stops dead as soon as he hits the ground. And it was like this loud thud of Mike just smashing into the ground. And I was like, damn. So they picked him up and they actually had to carry him out. And I ended up walking through, but the way I was going through was I was actually going through the dining hall and people were stopping me and security wanted me out. But these people had money. So they'd stop me and they would talk to me and ask me like, what do you mean divest? I remember one guy was like, so you want me to invest in Greenpeace? Like he had his checkbook out, but I'm like, no, I want you to take whatever money you have that's invested in fossil fuels and take it back. Just divest your money. And yeah, and so anyways, they kick us out and they got us all at the back of this building and we're all waiting for this elevator to come up and they're all figuring out what to do. And the security's there. And then the owner comes out and he's like, I want these fucking guys out of my building right now. And so security starts walking towards us. And as they're walking towards us, Pussy Riot shows up. And they're like, oh, this is our band. They call it an ice bear. They call a polar bear an ice bear. They jump onto the polar bear and they're like, this is if you kick these guys out, you kick the ice bear out, we're not playing tonight.
Were they playing there? That's wild. That's like perfect.
The owner's like, you figure out what to do. And he just fucked off. And so we're all standing around looking at security. Security's looking at us. Pussy Riot's right there. And they're not moving. And we're like, this is amazing. We had this his name was Hubert Soper. He was the guy who directed Darwin's Nightmare. Pussy Riot's with us. And we're in the way of them bringing the memorabilia onto the stage to auction off. And so I'm watching them pass memorabilia over. And I fucking see, I think it was Gandalf's wand from Lord of the Rings because Christopher Lee's there and he's auctioning that off. So I grab it. It has to get passed over the polar bear. So I grab the fucking wand. I have nowhere to run, but I grab the wand and then security starts rushing me and they're giving out some kind of awards outside. And I remember just putting the fucking pole down and shouting like, you shall not pass. And, everybody stops and I'm kidding. I'm just kidding. I just want a couple pictures of this and then you guys can have it back. So I took a couple selfies and I gave it back to security because they didn't really know what to do, right? They didn't want to get rough with us because Pussy Riot was there and they were the main act. They were going to perform. Yeah. And if they didn't perform, people were there to see Pussy Riot and they're bringing the message of, Russia and, revolution and, all that good jazz.
They would also definitely make a thing about it if they did do anything to you. I would assume.
So we're just standing around and we just decide fuck it, let's just go. So we leave. And then as we're leaving, I remember there was a couple security guards. One was manhandling Mike. One was manhandling this old guy. And he was getting in my face. And these I'm 6'4", and these guys were fucking big dudes. They're 6'3", 6'4", 6'5", 6'6", in crazy shape. These guys were in fucking shape. If shit was to go down, and they were to fucking start throwing, the security guards, they'd be the ones left standing. So as we're in there, I remember this one security guard who was really rough with everybody got in my face a couple times. We were actually going to throw down. And so as we're leaving, our whole group is in this elevator and we're going down. The elevator doors are closing. I stopped them from closing and I opened them up. And I was like, at some point, you guys are all going to wonder how we got in and how this happened. And you're going to start pointing the fingers at somebody. I'll let you know right now. It was that fucking guy right there that let us in. And it was the guy who was the biggest asshole. And he left. The doors closed and we leave. So we end up going to these restaurants and stuff, and we're talking about the action we did and if it was if it mattered, if what we did actually mattered. And at the same time, we're well, I guess we salvaged this because our initial plan got busted, and our initial plan, we were was that even good? And then we get a call from fucking Pussy Riot that's hey, we're doing a show. Here's the address. Backstage passes for you and your entire crew, and bring the ice bear. Cool.
Bring the Ice Bear.
And that's at a completely different venue. So we go there because who the hell in their right minds is going to turn down a backstage pass to Pussy Riot?
Nobody.
And we go. And so we all roll up and we get out, and it's this fucking nice ass venue. It's completely different from where they had the Peace Gala. And we start walking. And I start looking around, and I'm like, everyone that's coming here looks like, they don't look like Pussy Riot fans. They don't look like punk rockers. They don't look really young. They're wearing really expensive like dresses and tuxes. I'm like, man, this is kind of crazy.
Where did they invite you?
Some starting to look a little familiar. Like I was like, I think I seen that person at the Peace Gala. Well, this is kind of weird. I look up, and at the front doors, as we're like at the front doors, is the fucking security from the Peace Gala. This is the after show. So they just moved everybody from where they were at to this new place. And then again, we get fucking rushed by all of the security who's like, you guys aren't fucking coming in, and fuck you. And like, they're just like so pissed. And then Pussy Riot comes up, and it's like the seas part, and they grab us and they bring us down into this like club where we're like, it's crazy. I don't drink, but it was an open bar. Everything was like free. It was just like being in a really weird European gangster movie, because like there was a section that was like roped off with all of these amazingly beautiful women, and then there was like, these looked like these Turkish dudes, these old Turkish dudes sitting in the corner, like none of those guys are bad guys in real life. Like I'm just looking at them like, this is like an exact crazy gangster European movie. And then they pull us on stage, and they bring up a couch, and we're sitting on a couch watching Pussy Riot play their whole entire set.
Oh, that's so
that
amazing.
was the night. One of the best nights I've ever had in my entire life.
Yeah. That's the best night of my life too, and I wasn't even there. So. Amazing. Yeah. I mean, that's so fucking cool. First of all, I'm dying because I just like love Pussy Riot so much. But also like, that's fucking eventful, and you really.
So like, there was
words.
There's Natalia, and I can't remember the other girl's name. There's like the short one, and then like there's a taller, darker skinned one. They definitely, like, I don't know where they're at now, but they definitely carried trauma from being thrown in prison, because this is after they got out, and they definitely still had that. Both of them still had it when we were in the back and we're talking and chilling. Like you move too fast around them, and you just seen them like freeze up. You're like, oh shit, they're still in it. They're still processing it. They're still coming out of it. They're still like, you never want to go to those Russian fucking like prisons, and now you got sent directly there. So like, yeah, they're as hardcore and as real as you think they are, and they're super friendly at the same time. There wasn't like people are beneath us like you get with certain celebrities and actors. They were like fucking the coolest people I've ever met, ever. Like, whatever you think of Pussy Riot as, that's what they are. And like, I was so excited to meet them. They were just so beautiful.
Cool. That is so freaking cool. Like, your whole story is cool, but I'm like a little starstruck by that.
I was so starstruck with them, and they were treating us like celebrities because of what we did, and we're like, you're fucking Pussy Riot. Like, this is two very different levels.
Yeah, they are. Yeah, they are fucking impressive. And you know what? This story with the Yes Men, there's even like you've done multiple projects with them, and even your more recent project, like I think you got, like, I noticed 4 awards. There might have been more.
I think we got 6 now.
Nice. And yeah, maybe we'll just switch, or I could talk about this forever, but I have a big list of things to talk to you about. The Peace Pipeline was your other project with the Yes Men. And then I think, is that all of them? 1, 2, 3, 4? Did we get them?
Yeah, I think that was it.
Mm-hmm.
We're planning more, and we're actually trying to get a show out of the Peace Pipeline.
Yeah, and so actually we have some clips of the peace pipeline that we can play just in 1 second. We can play the first one, and it just kind of like shows people like an introduction. And then there's a pretty good part that I think would be great to show also that I think would demonstrate. Well, it demonstrates exactly what it demonstrates. I'm not going to ruin it, but we can play the first part first, just so people can see the intro for the starting for the peace pipeline.
The pipe's gonna go from here to here to here, and then straight down that way.
Right underneath those white guys.
And then over. It's all gonna be clear cut.
I like it.
It's all gotta be moved out of the way.
We're a native owned and operated pipeline company. And you can look us up. And
Carl Ironized.
we've been granted the last 19 miles of the pipeline to
through Duluth. But unfortunately, some of this golf course is gonna have to be way in the pipe. Obviously, the cheapest way is to run it straight through. So we're gonna dig it up. They might put it back down. They're looking at schematics right now. It might be an above ground pipe because that's obviously the cheapest. Right through.
And so I think that is great. And I think it's really important. And I like how throughout the entirety of it, how long is it again? I think there's 2 versions.
I think there's like 20 minutes ish.
Yeah, you hit a lot of important points that I don't think communities would consider or wouldn't even be able maybe to have empathy for, which might be a better way to word it. Because like people hear about pipelines going through Indigenous communities or going through places that Indigenous communities are saying no to, but I don't actually think it hits home for them until you went there and were like, this pipeline is going right here. Yeah, how was that experience for you?
I think like it was interesting. Like it was cathartic in a lot of ways. I dreamt up this idea. I remember I was just like about to fall asleep one night, and I'm like, what would it be like if white people had to experience the powerlessness of a pipeline going through? And like, I remember not laughing about it at first, because I know there's certain communities, marginalized communities, that don't have a say, but like, what if it wasn't the marginalized communities? What if it was like rich folk? What if it was like the upper class, the middle class, people who had a say, people who could make changes? That I was thinking like, because when the Dakota Access pipeline went through, it was supposed to go north of, oh man, I can't remember the name of the city. The one I was right next to where they put the pipe, but the city itself voted and then said they put it south of the town.
Yeah, they said it was wild. They could say no. How? Yeah.
And then when we said no, it wasn't a thing. It was just like, no, it's going through here. So I wanted to share that experience. And then I got to thinking more, what places could we do? What places could we hit? So we did like this press release. We did a press release news gathering. We invited people to come down. You promise everybody a bunch of shit, which is what they do with us time and time again, and you fail to deliver time and time again. Is what they do with us. And then I think the cherry on all of it was interrupting. I wanted to interrupt church. I remember I was like, let's just go to a church and interrupt it halfway through the sermon. Whatever sermon's happening, we'll just interrupt it. And they're like, with what? And I'm like, well, I remember saying like, well, we're going to move graves. We'll take a casket through a church as church is happening. And if people start getting upset, we'll tell them that we're just, we're making way for a pipeline. Because I know they've interrupted ceremonies with us. When it came to extraction, when it came to the potlatch ban, the ceremonial ban, with us, it's part of our reality. even like 5 or 6 years ago, there's a man who, an indigenous man who built a sweat on his nation, but the nation was so heavily colonized that the people came and they just tore it down. He was expressing his own right, his own connection back to creation. They tore it down. I wanted to film these things, and I wanted to see what their experience was like. I really wanted them to share in our reality. And being like the most asshole, belligerent person I could possibly be while we're doing it. And fucking Tito, he's so funny. He's so amazing. Like we didn't have any training. We didn't have time. We didn't have like a budget. We had like a small budget to do this. But we didn't have time to rehearse. So everything you see, we're just creating literally on the spot.
Yeah,
and
like
Tito's,
he's so funny.
He's so amazing. He's so funny. He was like literally like there's people who went to Standing Rock and gave it all up. Tito was one of those people. He literally gave everything up to be at Standing Rock, and it affected him, and this was kind of like trying to bring some medicine back, and he really does shine through it, and he's so funny.
Yeah, like even in the intro video that we just saw, it's like just the beginning. Like, where do you want to put the pipe? Just under those white guys right there. Like, cracks me up. If we want to play the second clip, and then we can show the church bit, and then maybe talk about it for a second.
What's this all about? What's this all about?
Casket that they dig up. What's going on here?
We're just doing some relocation.
Of what?
Of
Oh, that's real?
yeah, just a couple of.
What is this all about?
Oh, we're part of a pipeline company. We're contracted by Enbridge, so we're gonna have to move some remains for the
So why did you come
pipeline
here
that's coming in.
without any talking for?
Oh yeah, no, we have permission. We have eminent
Permission
domain
from
Enbridge. So
No, you don't
Enbridge
have
got
eminent domain here.
Enbridge got eminent domain because
Not
they're
here.
rerouting their pipeline up here. Oh, you want to talk to the person? Yeah. Oh, here's our PR person.
Are you the pastor of this church? Or the priest?
No, I'm a trustee of the church.
Or the trustee? Okay. Well, I don't know if you know this, but when they put in pipelines, they have to move bodies out of the way. And so we're just, we have consent to move one or two of these bodies, which is what we're doing right now.
You're doing what?
We're grave removals. This happens when pipelines go through.
We don't
They do it
care.
on reservations.
We don't care about that.
You don't care about Standing Rock?
Not on a Sunday.
Not on a Sunday right
So-
after the
We
service
just
finished.
got out of church.
But what I'm saying is that this happens on reservations.
Well,
They remove bodies, or they just plow over them to
It
put a
does,
pipeline
but
in.
we just left a really peaceful service.
I understand. I
So
understand.
maybe
I
today
completely
isn't
understand.
the day.
But in the name of the economy and pipelines, that's what we want to do.
That's,
We're good right now.
hey, did you see
Guys, good job. Thank you very much.
Did you see
All right, we should probably head out. We have 3 more cemeteries to hit in the county. So let's go. Let's put this pipe.
And so many things in that. Like, so many things. The lady taking pictures, the lady videotaping, them being like, we do not give a fuck about Standing Rock. This is my Sunday. How dare you talk to me about such issues? Levels.
Yeah, I mean, there's like the entitlement. There is their reality, which just got shattered in that moment. Yeah, it was for me. People ask why I wasn't mad. Why I didn't get mad at the shit they were saying, and it didn't surprise me. It didn't surprise me. It's just who they are. It's just where they're at. And it was one of those things where like our realities are so contrasted, where they are, who they are, versus where we are and who we are as Indigenous peoples. But it was fun. Like there was just seeing the reactions from like the, dropping the coffins, driving around with the coffins. Yeah, it was something different. It was something unique. I wanted to go further. We were worried about getting arrested, and we didn't have like I said, we'd never have the budget. We were just going off of like pro bono with some lawyers we knew from the States. They were saying you get away with this, but not this. Trying to take it too far. Yeah, I think for me that really just highlighted the different realities that we're in. I wanted people to see that. My objective isn't, when I'm creating these things, culture jamming the way we are, it's not to change the minds of the people that are there. If that happens, that's amazing. But really, it's for the viewer. It's for the person that's really consuming this and bringing it in. What are they getting out of it? What are they learning about? And for some folks, because when you watch the entire film, you can see the snippets of what we go through when the police are arresting us and the police are harassing us, when the police are assaulting us, compared to that moment. So you do see this, you get to see it and experience it. And so it's really just for the viewer. It's not really for them. I love capturing their raw emotions because that's all truth. They're all speaking as much truth as they possibly can. Their reaction's all genuine. And that's the thing we want to capture. Again, we don't, as Indigenous folks, get that. We aren't allowed those sentiments, It's just like you Indigenous peoples are in the way, or you're too simple. You don't understand what's happening. You don't understand the economy. You don't understand pipelines. You just need to get out of the way. I wanted to bring that reality to them, and it was fucking beautiful.
It was beautiful. And I don't think people really do like it, like for example, like in Calgary, like our C train line goes through where the grave was here. I think they said there was like a single grave. And then so they named the like Truth and Reconciliation, let's explain this to people that are listening. The Truth and Reconciliation, like the calls to action after that person.
Yeah.
But like, why the fuck would you put the C train through? Like, what the fuck? And I've talked to people, other white people about it. And they're like, no, that didn't happen. And then they'll Google it and they're like, no one said anything. No one had any issues with it. And I was like, well, did no one have issues with it? Because that's another narrative I hear a lot too. It's like, well, no one spoke up or no one said anything, which I feel is like utter horseshit.
Yeah, I guarantee you that we speak up about shit all the time. But the deficit narrative of Indigenous peoples that Canadians have been consuming for generations is that we just don't know any better. We're just stupid, simple people who can't keep up. We can't evolve. We're lost in time. We're frozen in time. But our concerns are real, and we voice them. But again, they always fall on deaf ears. So, they'll say like these natives just want another handout. It's a classic conservative line. These natives just want another handout. And really, it's more or less just about learning. More or less just about listening and being a good neighbor and a human being. Because if we wouldn't do that shit, to like Native folks, when we follow our traditional values, our traditional governance systems, we don't carry out these kind of atrocities and just say like, this is the way that it is. We have more grace, more elegance.
And you've taken other, like you've done work with other groups to kind of to portray this further. Like you did with Vice, you did like a series that kind of portrayed this in a more serious note instead of
fuck Vice.
That's fair.
Yeah, I mean,
we don't even have to put this part in.
No, it's fine. You can put it in. Fuck Vice. The show that was initially pitched to us and what made it to the air were two very different things. I had to work, unfortunately, with Michelle Latimer, and I was, at the time, I totally was invested in the fact that she was an Indigenous person, an Indigenous woman, like we're all at different levels of reconnecting and culturally reintegrating our identities. And that's where I placed her because I had trust. I also had trust in Vice that they would do their due diligence, which they didn't do. They didn't. The crazy, sad thing about Michelle Latimer is that she's talented, but she needed her foot in the door. And she got her foot in the door as being this person in film and making film and also being a gatekeeper for Indigenous folks. It's so fucked up to think that Michelle Latimer was a gatekeeper for other Indigenous creatives. And I remember pitching her ideas like the peace pipeline and being shot down. And then myself thinking like, maybe it's not that good of an idea. And it's like, I'm fucking winning awards for that.
6 awards.
So far, yeah, 6. There's like other awards, there's other ceremonies we're giving it to, like, but that's the thing. You have these disconnected white people and their idea of what it is to be Indigenous. That's what she wanted to have. And when I say like fuck Vice, I fully mean it wholeheartedly. Like fuck Vice and the people that are associated, the creatives behind Rise. Like we what we captured was the true essence of Winnipeg. One of resilience and one of beauty, one of strength of character, one of these like one of people against insurmountable odds that colonization has brought us to. It's holding us down, that has conditioned our own people, to act against ourselves, not in our best interest, sometimes out of survival. That's like the main thing that people don't realize about Winnipeg. There's a lot of people are just caught in that survival mentality because they're not given the same opportunities as other Canadians. They're not given the same opportunities or beholden as other Canadians. And as a result, they get caught in this vicious cycle that is not happening by chance. It's totally planned and it's calculated. They call it colonial enforced poverty. These socioeconomic problems we're in are caused by these calculated choices by the provincial and then federal government. We captured the spirit of Winnipeg, but what made it to film was another poverty porn piece. And it fucking disgusts me. There were some good aspects to that episode that I was in, but there wasn't like the one thing I can I always kind of go back to. There was a youth sweat for youth by youth. Like Indigenous youth were putting up a sweat lodge for other Indigenous youth that were in care or that were in trouble. It was youth for youth by youth that never made it to the air. There was Leonard Sumner, he's a musician. This doesn't make the air. There's communities that have been displaced from floods and from fires, mostly from floods, but they're literally living in hotels. Okay? They've been living in hotels for like a couple of years. They can't go back home because it's always fucking flooded. And then they have to repair. And then when the repairs go through, another flood comes by and it fucks them all up. There's a lot of hydro issues with this. Like their communities are being flooded out by the hydro dams, by a bunch of other shit that's all out of their hands. That they're subject to whatever fucking colonial ideas they have that they're carrying out. So Leonard hosts a free concert for members of his own community and those that are displaced by the floods. And he gets other artists to go there on their free time and do a show because these kids are fucking stuck in a hotel. Then he answers questions. They sign autographs. They talk to the youth. It was such an empowering thing to be a part of. Doesn't make it to the fucking film. But what does? These poverty porn pieces that all they serve really is the colonial gaze to be like, oh yeah, those Indians, they're still kind of fucked up. Those Indians, they really don't know how to evolve. It was so disgusting to be a part of. There was some good parts, but there was a lot more to Winnipeg that was actually shown. And I remember apologizing to everybody because I saw a sneak peek and I told them this is bad. You guys need to fix a lot of the shit and I got stonewalled. I had no creative control over the episode. I had nothing. And they're like, oh no, people seeing it, people love it. Our test group from Winnipeg loves it. All the fucking people we met from Winnipeg fucking hated it. They liked kind of some of the segments that they were in, but overall they felt, again, it was just another piece which exploited Winnipeg and the people in Winnipeg. And I remember just sitting there, I'm like, man, this is so fucking shitty. So I apologized to everybody. I made like a public post, wasn't supposed to, but just saying like, fuck Vice, and this is terrible. And it really like broke the hearts of some of the organizers in Winnipeg because they put their trust out. It was like one of those things where they're like, oh yeah, well, you know, we don't really trust Vice, but we hear you have an Indigenous filmmaker named Michelle Latimer who's at the forefront. Okay. There's also Jared Martineau. We kind of trust him. And we kind of heard about this like Gitz guy from, you know, I don't know more stuff, and kind of seems legit. Unfortunately, like Jared got fired from Vice, and I think all of his creative input got like, he was totally erased from the Rise show. And it just was kind of, I felt bad because it really just became this white thing that white people were running. So I'll say it again, like, yeah, fuck Vice. It was, yeah, it was. And the crazy thing is they empowered Michelle Latimer. They did these damaging pieces of Indigenous peoples. But what have they done in restitution? What have they done since then? You know, these people who brought her to power, who gave her money, who gave her creative control, what have they done to fix any of this stuff? Nothing. Because they're not really about the information. They're more about getting the clicks. They're more about getting the just like the social awareness. They don't really care about anything else. Whatever it costs to get that social awareness, those clicks, that's all they're invested in. So I'll say it again. Fuck Vice.
Mm-hmm. You know, it kind of speaks to it that Rise won the like Canadian Screen Awards, but then like the Peace Pipeline, like the North Dakota Human Rights Film, it's a really long film festival and summit award, Ukrainian Short Film Award, best short film documentary. Like you won stuff in places, and then this Rise one was like Canadian Film Awards, which like makes more sense to me now.
I don't know, but if you look at like if you look at the people on stage, there's only one Indigenous person, and that's Sarain. If you look at like that, who actually fucking won, bunch of white people, and then Sarain, who was literally, and maybe it's voluntary because she hasn't really talked about Michelle Latimer, the deceit that Michelle had against like all Indigenous folks. But she was used, her image was used to push Michelle Latimer's agenda. And she's never talked about it. But when you look at that stage, all a bunch of non-native folks congratulating themselves, except for Sarain. You know, she's the only Indigenous person on there.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not that surprising that Vice is shitty. I think it was started by like Gavin McGinnis or something. So that guy sucks.
Yeah, Gavin. I mean, when I went there, people who worked with Gavin had said that he was like a really insecure dude, like who just needed, like, people like, he just needed a fucking hug. He just needed some like self-assurance from people that he was an okay person, you know. And unfortunately, he became what he is now.
Yeah, whatever that is.
And it's sad because prior to him being what he is now, when he was at Vice, this really shy, insecure, brilliant dude.
Oh.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah. Now a piece of shit. I'm gonna say that one.
Now a piece of shit.
Okay, I'm gonna keep barreling forward through all your stuff. So all of your film work and all that stuff, you also do workshops, but besides workshops, you also do like youth work. And so and besides that, you have a book, but we'll get to that. And like the workshops are all around reconciliation, colonization, and just like the history of treaties. And I guess reconciliation, I don't know if that's the right word, but teaching people like the real history and then what happened and how it affects today, which I think is like very, very, very complicated for people. Because I think there's like a disconnect between history and current things when you're like explaining things to people, especially about Canadian history. I think there's like people get lost in like the atrocities never stopped. They're like, this is history and it has nothing to do with current, but you really try and tie it all together. And I really like, I've attended so many of your workshops and I've learned so much. And I don't even know what I want to ask you about it because I feel like it's just a whole bunch of emotional labor. So if anybody wants to attend these workshops, GitzCrazyboy.com.
I mean, so what? There's emotional labor behind it. I do believe that education is the antithesis to racism. Because there's a gap between Canadians and Indigenous folks, and it's there. Whether you choose to agree that it's there, if you see as like we're all one color, we're all one people, whatever. Legislation, laws, things that they push through have created this gap between Indigenous peoples and Canadians. Like I'm registered as an Indigenous person. You can't say I'm a Canadian because I'm not. I'm Siksikatsitapi and I'm Dene Activist, and that's what I am. I'm not a Canadian. By law, I'm not a Canadian. So if you have these like feelings like, oh, we're all Canadians. No, we're not. I don't really like doing the slides. People do that, which is great when they do presentations. And, I like to engage folks. So the one that I do a lot of is the colonization and treaties. So we actually run a simulation. You have a group of like at least 5. 10's great, but at least 5. I've done them for like a couple hundred people. But the minimum is 5, but what we'll do is we'll play a game. We'll go through a simulation, we'll play a game. And at the end of this game, 100% interactive, you have full choice, you have autonomy. I give some directions, I lay out some rules, you go through it. At the end of the simulation, I want to say about 90 minutes, you'll have a fucking amazing understanding of treaties, the Indian Act, colonization.
Mm-hmm. Also book him at GitzCrazyboy.com.
Yes.
As well. And yeah, I would recommend. I've done almost every workshop and watched everything that I have seen.
Thank you.
Definitely. And so, and you also do, so then you do after school programs, working with youth, land-based leadership, all for youth, and then like learning through art. A lot of it, you do kind of stuff at the University of Calgary, but for kids, right? Or not kids, but like youth.
Oh, no, the University of Calgary,
or they've booked it before maybe, and I'm mixing it.
Yeah, the University of Calgary has in the past. University of Alberta has the colonization game. After school programs I used to run in Fort Mac until the Fort Mac fire. Oh. And I had 2 youth programs plus an elder youth lunch that I was running. Our after school programs were Indigenous based. They're focused on reintegrating Indigenous practices to youth, so making them not so foreign. Smudging, bringing in elders. We'll do art activities and projects. Challenging youth. We'll do like talking circles. If we get into like ceremonies, we do ceremonies as well. Really, we just did like, and I'm still friends with all these kids who are now like, man, they're in their like early 20s. And there's even some I've been working with kids since I was 20. So last almost, we're going to be pushing 20 years of working with youth. So I'm still friends. I'm still connected with a lot of the kids I worked with throughout the years. Yeah, there's some of those brilliant, beautiful minds I've had to come across, The after schools programs, yeah, those were all about finding out who we really are as Indigenous folks, but also creating an environment where we can just be ourselves, silly, confused, directionless. And it was all welcome because it was all beautiful, Wherever you were at when we ran a youth program, that's what you came in as. And, sometimes it's just to find a quiet place because home is so crazy. and sometimes it was, they would try to send, they would send me, they would, you know, the teachers would be like, well, good luck with, some of these fucking teachers need to just quit, you know, they'd be like, good luck with this kid. And they were always like the best, funniest, brightest kids. You know, they were challenging at times, but once you established a relationship, a level of trust, like if you were to go into war, this is, you'd want him at your side, him or her or them at your side. You know, like if you're going to war, this is the person we're taking. Because they were so funny. Even if like, it reminded me of that quote from the Seven Samurai, which is like the wood chopping samurai. You know, they're like, they're talking about getting these samurai to protect the village, and they get this wood chopping samurai, and they're like, what's the skill level at? And they're like, oh, it's mediocre. But when times get challenging, their spirit is going to keep us like, you know, up and bright. And I always felt like that with a lot of the kids. They were still learning, you know, still learning how to be little people. But yeah, I mean, it was fun. I had a lot of fun with running after school youth programs, doing film projects with kids, creating art activities. Yeah, it's been a few years though since I was in that, but I loved it. I still love it.
And so your book, readable by both youth and adults. Just gonna throw that out there. It's a pretty good read. Your book has actually gained a metric butt ton of attention from a lot of different places all over the world. Because I think you did like it was on an Australia radio station.
Yeah.
But like book clubs have also discussed it. CBC had it on there. It was on like a different news station also, and then the University of Calgary radio station.
Yeah, I mean, it was a YA young adult book. I wrote it. I had raised this boy. Oh man, he was about one to about three and a half, and things didn't work out with his mom, and then we stopped talking. And so there was the greatest heartbreak was loving this boy as my own son and not having a relationship or anything afterwards, you know, just having it just completely cut. Yeah, it was so difficult and so hard to just try to piece together your life when this child is no longer there. And things didn't work out with me and his mom, and but wanting to give him something, you know. And I wrote it for all youth, specifically Indigenous youth, whose parents had split up. You know, for those kids that were wondering why they didn't see their dad, or their mom's ex, or their dad's ex, you know, or their mom, why they didn't see them, and where they stood in their life. And I wanted to write this book for this child. And I wanted to at least give him that. So if he ever wondered or ever, you know, wanted to know or anything, he would know. But what I found, and it was written for kids, young adults, young teens. I was surprised at the first book reading that I did was for these seniors. They were like in their 50s, and they were older than me, but they said like you wrote this, it was like you wrote this book for me. And at the time I was like, wow, I remember thinking like, no, I didn't, they totally didn't write it for you. Like this, you were not my target audience. But then I found like people in their 30s and their 20s, you know, they'd write to me, they'd send me a message, and they would say like I had so weird, unexpected connections. People, they would talk to me about people who had passed away, you know, and it helped them with some closure, or it helped them. And this is like, I don't know anything about this. I didn't write for this purpose, but these were their own parallels and their own things that their conclusions that they themselves are drawing. And so you just have to sit there and take it in and be like, I never know how to take it. Like even today, I don't know how to respond to it. And very, grateful, if that's the word to use, that it had hit people on so many different levels and so many different ages. That it's there, you know. And I was, yeah. So that was the book, and then afterwards we reconnected, and It was about 8 years, so he was about 11 when we reconnected, and I gave him the book. I told him, you know, this is for you, and I didn't know how he'd respond to it, but at 11 he read the book and he just loved it. And he was talking about becoming like an author himself, and we would tell stories to each other, and we've been connected since then, since the book got released to now. So it's been pretty cool.
So that book is called Secret of the Stars.
Yes.
And then sorry, you're releasing another book now, or you have released it and I totally missed it.
No, it hasn't come out yet. It's a graphic novel. It's coming out, I think, either the end of this year or sometime next year.
Cool.
That one's through Highwater Press, and it's called The Res Doctor. I think that's what the title is right now. And so let's go back. The Secret of the Stars is a story about a young man who watches 4 stars fall to the earth, and then he's told, he has a vision, and in this vision he's told by these spirits to find these 4 stars. And I remember as a kid watching stars, shooting stars, and thinking, like, what do they become when they hit the earth? Do they still remain a star, or do they become something else? And so when this character in the book, who's nameless, has to go find these 4 stars, what do they become when they hit the earth? What do they change into? What does he find? The journey takes him his entire life. And there's an ultimate bigger meaning to why he had to get those 4 stars. And all of it is revealed in the book.
That the link for the book will be below.
And you can buy them from me on the website, and I sign them and send them to you. The new one, though, the graphic novel I'm working on, we're just putting the finishing touches, the coloring and all that jazz. That's The Res Doctor. That's through Highwater Press. That'll be out hopefully next year.
Awesome.
And that one's already done, and I'm working on my manuscript right now for a teen series. Ooh. I've been working on it for a while, but I'm actually just booking time and just doing it now.
Nice.
So that, hopefully I'll have this one done. I'm about 210 pages in. I'm hoping to have it written before the end of May.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, I'm freaking excited to check it out. Awesome. And yeah, I'll definitely throw the link below if you want to read his first book before his second one comes out.
Yeah. Thank you.
Awesome. I just have one more question for you.
Shoot.
What is your statement for the people?
The world is a very strange and scary place. And all the security that we used to have exists in the days that pass. And we're never going to get those back. And you could be defeated by this idea. You could be reclusive by this idea, this reality. But you got to realize that we're all here, and we have the ability to change the course that we're on right now. And when you're at your lowest, just know that you're loved passionately by people around you. Even if you're in the midst of addiction and you're stuck in that, at your lowest, at your very, very lowest, we don't feel like you can feel any worse as a human being. People still love and admire you. And when I come back to this idea of the world, there is no second act. There's nothing after this now. It's literally up to us to try to change the course. And you're here on this earth right now, walking around, living and breathing. And you have to take that first step, because we can change the course. We can change the course direction we're on right now, but we can only do it together. We can't just do it on our own. We have to come together to do it. We actually can save the planet. We can save one another. So if there's anything, that's what I want to tell you. You can change the course, and that you are loved and appreciated wherever you're at right now in your life. whatever you got going on, if you're in the middle of a gigantic success or catastrophic failure, people love you and people want to see you doing better. And we appreciate it. And just, do as best as you can to try and heal yourself. And be gentle.
That was goddamn beautiful.
Thank you.
Damn, that was a real one. And so below, I'm going to put the links for the Peace Pipeline, also for a clip of Gitz at the tar sands with the Yes Men, and also the Cinema for Peace because you want to see the polar bear. And then, of course, Gitz's website, and that's where you can find the book, and that's also where you can book him for workshops. Also, just check him out all over social media. He's hilarious, and his memes are so fucking funny. So
the memes, I totally forgot about the memes.
It's a whole nother part. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time. I know we went a little over, but I think I'm going to leave this one a little longer, so because it's just great. So thanks for everything.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Cut.